Was nice. So here we are again for a week of meditation masterclass on the Nature of Mind project. My name is Vidyamala and I'm based in Herefordshire, a little town called Ledbury, very beautiful. I'm actually living in the same house as Sona, who did the masterclass last month. So he's on a camera in another room in the same house. Yeah, so really lovely to see you all, and thank you so much for joining us. And so I think we're probably halfway through, more or less, this Nature of Mind project, which is a 6-month project investigating this great mystery of the mind. And this week is titled The Unfolding Mystery. And I'm hoping we can really sort of relax into mystery a little bit more. And it's so interesting. The interesting thing about this kind of project, which is so exciting, is that we are investigating something through a whole variety of ways that is ultimately mysterious. So we're kind of using the mind to explore the reaches of the mind and discover that it's impossible to really pin it down, which I think is very fascinating. So there's been 3 seminars on the project so far, 3 big substantial interviews, and then seminar discussions afterwards. So we had Ian McGilchrist, first of all, wonderful, wonderful thinker who wrote a very significant book, The Master and His Emissary, about the different hemispheres of the brain, or the functioning of the different hemispheres of the brain, the left and the right. And suggesting that in our culture, in the Western culture, we've got a little bit out of whack, as it were. So the left hemisphere deals with focused, abstract, kind of more sort of structured thinking. And the right hemisphere is more broad and open and alert. It's a kind of big field of the mind. And in the West, we're using the sort of rational mind perhaps a little bit too much, and we've lost touch with this more broad, open perception. And he's not a materialist. He's not a committed materialist. And he believes it's likely that consciousness is primary. So it's consciousness which is the primary experience, as it were. And then all these activity of the mind is secondary. And of course, materialists flip that and think that everything is physiological and consciousness is just a byproduct of physical processes. So he believes that's dangerous, and that there's many things that are wrong with the world, destruction of the planet, nihilism, and so on. That's a result of this materialism that we've somehow taken as a predominant view in our culture. Then we had Penny Satori the following month, who's a wonderful researcher about near-death experiences. So that was really interesting. Her investigation and exploration of interviewing many people who've had near-death experiences. And again, she's come out of all that believing that consciousness is primary. She's not believing that the near-death experiences are just kind of the firing of the brain as it goes out, as it were. She thinks that consciousness is primary. Very, very interesting. She thinks that near-death experiences are difficult to explain from a purely materialist position. So I'd really recommend you watch those interviews. They're all on the Nature of Mind website. And then last week, I think it was about a week ago, the latest interview was released with Bernardo Kastrup, who's an analytical idealist, thinker, writer, obviously an extremely bright guy. Sometimes when I hear people speak, I almost have the sense their brain's on fire. They're so kind of such deep thinkers and so curious about history, the mind, experience. He's got a PhD, I think, in philosophy and a PhD in, I think it's computer engineering. So he's been involved in artificial intelligence, all these kind of things, as well as philosophy. And so analytical idealism is definitely the idea that everything is an expression of mind or consciousness, that consciousness is the primary experience. And it's quite interesting. Ian McGilchrist is quite subtle in his refutation of materialism. He's a very sort of polite guy, I would say. And Bernardo Kastrup's much more provocative. I mean, he's just quite rude about materialism, really, which is also quite interesting. So he refutes it on a number of fronts: rational, logical, experiential. And he gives lots of reasons why we've ended up with this as our predominant worldview, which I'm not going to go into now. But I would really recommend that you watch that interview. Very, very interesting. And then, of course, we've got the Buddha. So we've had these three interviews, and I'm here as a practicing Buddhist, member of the Triratna Buddhist order, and this project is being curated by the Triratna Buddhist order. So that's the perspective that we're coming from on the project. And there's a very famous verse in what's called the Dhammapada, one of the early texts from the Buddha, where he says, "The mind is the basis for everything. Everything is created by my mind and is ruled by my mind." So that's very interesting, isn't it? Very much of the same current, if you like, as these other thinkers. The mind is the basis for everything. Everything is created by my mind and is ruled by my mind. So that'll be the way I'll be exploring things this week. This exploration of mind, which is really just a word for this experience of consciousness, of awareness, and also the activity of mind, thoughts, emotions, our normal day-to-day perception. So I'll be exploring that this week as the quality that we can release into more and more fully. So rather than living in this tight little narrow dualistic perspective, that we can release into something much more open, much more connected. And the Buddha is very clear that this open, broad quality of mind is full of love. He's very clear about that. It's not a kind of abstract, aloof quality, but its very nature is love. So on Thursday, I'm going to do a whole session on love. Yeah, so it's very interesting, isn't it, that if probably most of us, if we ask ourselves, what's my predominant way of perceiving things, we will probably agree that our default setting is that I'm this kind of fixed object here, the self. You're all out there as other, and there's not really much that connects us experientially. You know, I'm in my universe, you're in your universe. We're made up of matter, we're made up of stuff. We've got a mind functioning in there somewhere, but it's the mind we're not often very aware of. You know, it's just kind of propelling us through our days. Our thoughts and our drives and our impulses and our habits are driving us forwards, but there's not much awareness of what's happening. So we're just a kind of projectile going through the day, creatures of habits, and often suffering a great deal. And as we become aware, much more aware of that process, we realize how our mind can also be the cause of our suffering. So we're very tangled up in our thoughts. We're tangled up in our anticipation of the day. What's going to happen? How am I going to get through the day? I've got so much to do, and so on. We're tangled up in our memories, our regrets, and so on. Tangled up in our emotions, of course, and our thoughts and emotions are very, very intertwined. In fact, on Wednesday, I'm going to do a whole session on thoughts and emotions, and I'm going to deal with them together, because I think experientially they generally co-arise. So we're just kind of propelled along we're as it were quite asleep, in the sense of, you know, if we take the premise that there's a quality of consciousness that's ever present, that we can wake up to, that we can participate in, as it were. Bernardo Kastrup talks about the sort of oceanic quality of consciousness that's always there, full of love, mysterious, connected, boundless, open. You know, that's just absent, isn't it? It's sort of absent in our day-to-day life. So this week I'm hoping to give us various doorways where we can release this very tight, constricted, everyday mind that we're so trapped in, and we can have this sense of gradual opening to something richer. It's very interesting in the Buddhist tradition. There's a very famous text where there's some discussions going on about non-duality. Non-duality being this quality of mind that's very open, and it's not bifurcating into self and other as completely absolute separate entities. I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. But in this text, there's this whole discussion, and various people are giving these very, very deep, profound answers about the nature of non-duality. And then finally, this person, Vidyamala, his answer is what's called the thunderous silence. So his answer is to say nothing. So interesting. And the person who's asking the questions is most happy with that reply. That ultimately we cannot pin this down with concepts, because the what's happening when we release into this different way of perceiving is it's a different order of being, and our rational mind can't pin it down. So if you think you've understood it, you probably haven't. And it's good to just keep on opening, keep on releasing. So yeah, the thunderous silence of Vidyamala, very, very famous in the Buddhist tradition. And then my teacher, Sangharakshita, my Buddhist teacher, he agrees with that. So he when he's asked about the nature of reality, he says, well, really, the best thing you can say about it is nothing. It's the thunderous silence. But experientially, that's not that useful. I could just sit here and say nothing for the next 20 minutes. That wouldn't be terribly useful to you. So then Sangharakshita says, if we're going to say anything, we should just talk about experience. Move it away from concepts and talk about or experience what is actually going on. What is actually going on in my mind, in my body, in my emotions, in my thoughts. And by coming very, very close to examining what is actually happening, we can catch that initial arising of contraction, that initial arising of closing down around a completely autonomous, separate entity, me here, that I'm protecting at all costs, and you out there. We can catch that very, very initial arising, and then we can begin to work with that, and we can begin to soften. And I really like the word release. We can begin to release that habitual contraction. So I just want to say a little bit about that at this point, that the Buddha's clear, and Bernardo's clear about this as well, that we're not saying, or I'm not saying, the Buddha's not saying, that we don't exist at all. Yeah, because that's one of the wrong views that we can get into, is thinking it's all one and it's big sort of soup out there, and I'm just imagining myself completely, or I'm imagining you. No, the Buddha's saying, I do exist, and you do exist, but not the way we usually think we do. Yeah, so clearly I'm here. I've got my body, got my computer, my camera. You're out there. I can see you, and we are individuals. You can see that. But the mistake we make is to impose upon that something that's entirely separate and entirely autonomous and entirely sort of static, because our feeling of ourselves often and usually is quite static, isn't it? If we're honest, we don't really experience ourselves as a kind of flow of experience. We experience ourselves as quite rigid. So we're rigidifying against the flow of experience all the time. But I think this is an important point. I'm not saying we don't exist at all. I'm just saying we don't exist the way we think we do. And that becomes a very, very interesting area of inquiry. We just don't exist the way we think we do. So that's going to be what we're going to be really exploring this week, is how can we drop into, fully into being here, me being here as Vidyamala in this body, but to experience that as fluid, and changing. And because it's fluid and changing, it can always open a little bit more. So today we're going to do it through the body. Very, very interesting, because of course the body can just seem like a static lump, can't it? This kind of static lump that we're dragging through life, and the mind's much more interesting. So we like being up here. They're very exciting thoughts. Even when our thoughts are tormenting, we're still very, very engaged with them. And the body's just this kind of inert thing that is kind of annoying sometimes, that we're carting through life. No, the Buddha is saying very clearly, and these thinkers are saying, that the sense of this fluid self is very inclusive. It includes all of our experience, the body, the heart, the mind, perceptions, sounds, smells, and then this wonderful kind of vibrant, shimmering, living world that we are participating in, we're part of, and we can feel very connected to that. So coming into the body is very, very interesting. I'll say a bit more about that in just a moment. So really what we're going to be doing this week, I'm hoping, is moving towards a kind of profound simplicity, because that experience of just coming closer and closer and closer to what's happening has a simplicity about it, because we're dropping the layers and layers and layers of complexity that we generate through our misperception. All our worries and our thoughts and our stories and our beliefs, all these things that are so often misguided, that create these sort of crusty layers, as it were. So we're going to have a go at dissolving some of those and coming back to this very, very simple experience of just being here now and letting go of those layers of contraction. So it's a sort of profound simplicity that we can come closer to. And the way we're going to explore this is using a very, very central Buddhist insight, and we'll take that through the sessions over the week. And the central Buddhist insight is that everything is impermanent. Everything is impermanent. So my own teacher, Sangharakshita, he once said, and I found this so helpful. He said, if you take all the millions and millions of words that have ever been said throughout Buddhist history, and there are probably billions, and they're often contradictory and in different schools, and you think, I don't understand any of this, it's all so complex. And he said, if you took all those words and boiled it down to one word, that word will be impermanence. So that's great, isn't it? That's really the only word we need to remember this week. Impermanence, change. And this is very interesting, because you might think, well, that's obvious. It's not particularly deep. Because if I say to you, if you think about the world, is the world subject to the laws of impermanence? You'd say, yes, of course it is. Night becomes day, day becomes night, winter becomes summer, rivers flow, sun shines sometimes, doesn't shine other times. This body is going to eventually decay, and then it will entirely be gone. So you might think, well, it's kind of obvious. I think this is what I thought first of all. I thought, well, that's not very deep, impermanence. But then if you really start examining it, the world outside is impermanent. And when I first came across this, what I did is I thought, yeah, that's obvious. That's all impermanent. But I was still a kind of static, fixed entity looking out at an impermanent world. And of course, that gave me a sense of safety. Well, everything else is impermanent, but not me. That was my kind of unthought through assumption. But the Buddha's saying, no, even you are impermanent. And then I thought, well, okay, I can kind of accept that. I'm breathing, that's changing. I eat, food goes in, waste goes out, that's changing. My thoughts are changing. Certainly my body's changing. So I thought, well, I can kind of accept that. But there was still another part of me that was fixed and unchanging, that was looking in on my body changing. So that was interesting. And the Buddha's saying, no, there's not even that. There's not even some kind of little spotlight in there, or little person that's holding a spotlight, looking at everything and saying, oh, well, that's changing and that's changing and that's changing, but this isn't changing. No, the Buddha's saying absolutely everything, even your sense of self, this sort of fixed autonomous self, in there, that is also flow. And if you take the whole thing to its logical conclusion, it is a profoundly, profoundly different way of perceiving things. Everything starts dissolving into a much more fluid state of flux. I like this word flux. And the Buddha is very clear on that everything is flux. Everything is flow. Absolutely everything. Even this tiny little part of yourself that you think, well, maybe this is the exception and I can hold on to this. He's saying, no, even that is flux. And that can seem a little bit scary, maybe. Oh my God, there's nothing. But as I said before, the Buddha is very clear that there can be, how do I say this? The felt experience of that flow can have a kind of grounding stability to it. So if I really rest in my body and I'm feeling into the support of the chair, I'm letting go into gravity, and then in that I can begin to soften into everything, being less rigid, less tight, more fluid, more open, that can become very, very appealing. And rather than being trapped in something that's stuck, it's like, oh yes, there's a kind of resting back quality into this experience of flow. So we're going to be doing it quite gradually over the week, because taking it slowly is very, very important. And then we begin to get these little glimpses of this mysterious open, some of it's called the open dimension of being, this mysterious open dimension of being. And as I said, it has this felt quality of warmth, of love, of connectedness. The sort of metaphors that are used in the Buddhist tradition is the blue sky. That's a very classic one, that this mind that's freed from the ways we close down around it, or consciousness. It's like a clear blue sky. And that our thoughts and emotions are like clouds passing across the sky. So, of course, that's a very beautiful metaphor. Most metaphors have got limits. So I think the limit of the clear blue sky is we think it's up there. And so in our practice, we can sort of try to shoot up out of our body and be in a sky above us, because we get very literal. And because literally the blue sky is up there, we think we go from here to there. And that will just lead to tension and strain and feeling a bit weird. So it's a very sort of magical blue sky that is everywhere. And in my own practice, I often get a sense that the blue sky is sort of at the center of every cell in my body. Sometimes it's beneath me. So we go in to go out, as it were. But if we sort of split off and try and go out, that won't work. Bernardo uses the metaphor of the ocean, which I think is also very, very good. It's kind of oceanic, expansive quality. I really like the metaphor of the ocean. But again, it's a kind of, to my mind, it's a magical ocean, because the ocean, literally, as you go deeper, it gets darker. It does get stiller. The turbulence in an ocean is generally on the surface. And the deeper you go, the stiller it goes. So that's a good metaphor, because the surface of our minds is where the turbulence is. But as we go deeper, it gets quieter and stiller. But this is a magical ocean, and that as you go deeper, it gets more and more luminous and radiant. So that's pretty remarkable. This, as you drop deeper, there's this quality of brightness that arises. And in the Buddhist tradition, it's often said that this expanded mind is luminous and radiant. There's a lovely quote from the early texts where the Buddha says, "This mind is luminous when freed from the adventitious defilements." This mind is luminous when freed from the adventitious defilements. So adventitious defilements is a complicated way of talking about all the ways we get sort of gunged up in there with our habits. But yeah, this mind is luminous. And then Bernardo's got this metaphor, which I really liked, actually, Bernardo Kastrup, of the ocean and the whirlpool. So it's like the ocean is well, it's a limitless ocean. That's, again, where you need to use your imagination. It has no bounds. It's limitlessly vast, limitlessly deep. So that's the kind of open consciousness. But then what happens is these whirlpools form in the ocean, which is our sort of sense of a sort of limited self. And we get sort of sucked into the vortex of all of our habits, all of our views, all of our misperceptions. But of course, the whirlpool is made up of the ocean. They're not separate, they're not two. And very often what we do is we sort of split off, and we just think it's like we live our lives as if the whirlpool was completely separate from the ocean. But where it's a very good metaphor is the whirlpool is made up of the ocean, as it were, but it gets trapped in its own vortex. I'm sort of adding to his metaphor a little bit, but I think that's what he was suggesting. And he was even suggesting that the whirlpool's kind of got mirrors in it, so all we see is us is the whirlpool bouncing back at itself, and that's what we think is life. And that's not a particularly sort of pleasant way to live. Often we're just crashing around in the vortex of the whirlpool, bouncing back at our own reflection of this limited mind. But he's saying, you know, that we can experience the wider ocean. So that's what we're going to be working with today and the rest of the week. And I think we're going to be doing it through two sort of methods, as it were, because one method is to just remember there's something bigger. You know, my mind can be bigger than the way I normally experience it. I can relax, I can release into the ocean, to use that metaphor of the whirlpool in the ocean. But of course, that's not quite so easy to do, because we've got so many habits, we've got so many habitual ways of being, that we don't really know how to do that. So the other model I'm going to be using this week is actually working with the functioning of the mind and working with some of our habits and learning how to change the way we deal with anxiety, fear, worry, physical pain, all these kind of things. So I think we both need, it's very kind of paradoxical and delicate, but we need to both work with our normal perception, learn how to train this mind that somehow has got a bit dysfunctional, our sort of limited everyday mind. We need to do the work, and we also need to release and open. We need to do both those things. And some of us might need to do more of one or the other, depending on our temperaments. So again, my own Buddhist teacher says, we need to both climb the mountain. We need to do the work of like climbing the mountain of growth and development. And we also need to just let the lotus in the heart open. Just let the lotus in the heart open. And then you realize, oh, it's been there all along. All along, I've had this kind of sense of the potential of openness. So that's very interesting. And I think, again, we can get a bit stuck in one or other of those modes. We can either spend all of our life just trying harder and harder to train the unruly mind, and that can become its own kind of vortex, this endless striving. Or we can just be a bit sort of sloppy and just think, oh, I just need to release and relax and everything will be fine. And then that can create its own kind of currents in the whirlpool, where we are actually still a victim of some of our habits. So again, it's very, very interesting dance between sort of effort and release. And I'll try and sort of play with that a bit over the week. And just to be encouraging, in Zen Buddhism, which is kind of very pithy, pared down, simple, direct approach to Buddhism, there's lots of stories of when great practitioners become enlightened or awaken, and that's a way of talking about when you really kind of completely realize everything I'm talking about, and you completely live from that perspective, where your mind is totally free. You're still functioning in the world, but your mind is no longer sort of snagging. Your kind of everyday mind is no longer catching and snagging at experience, and you're able just to be in this kind of boundless state of openness and love as you go about your life. That's, I think, one way of perhaps describing awakening or enlightenment. Anyway, in the Zen tradition, there's all these stories of the great practitioners who awaken, And then they just laugh and laugh and laugh because they realize, oh, it was there all along. It was there all along. You know, if only I could have seen it. So it's not necessarily, you know, it's both here right now, and we need to kind of do all this work to awaken to that. But I love that idea that they just laugh their heads off. And they think, oh, I've been looking in the wrong way. I've been trying to go somewhere else. And it's just here. It's just here right now. That's why I was saying before with the blue sky, I think that one of the dangers of that metaphor is you just keep on trying to go away from this kind of contracted state to somewhere else. Whereas these great Zen masters saying, no, find the blue sky within you right now. So I really love that. Yeah. And sometimes it's an expression that's like one in the water who cries out for thirst. So you've got all this water everywhere and you're saying, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty. So it's like we have this opportunity to experience more open consciousness, but we don't know that. So I just wanted to say that to be encouraging. Yeah, and in some Buddhist schools, they call this kind of broad, open consciousness, this free mind, they call that ordinary mind, which I think is also very, very interesting. And they do that because we get caught up in wanting something special. You know, that I don't like this and I want that. And they say, no, this is just ordinary. It's so simple. It's right here, and we just complicate it. We create all this complexity. So ordinary mind, that's quite good. The ocean, the blue sky is ordinary mind. But as I said earlier on, all these words, they're just kind of attempts to point at something non-conceptual beyond language. Okay, so let's do a practice now. And today it's going to be very simple. We're just going to come into the body. We're going to investigate directly the experience of what we call the body. And even that, the body, suggests it's a lumpy thing down there that I can rather reluctantly go inside. So perhaps I could call it, today's practice is going to be exploring embodying. Exploring embodying. So we're exploring the verb of body, exploring a verb of embodiment. And we'll do that through just experiencing what it means to be embodied directly. And we'll tease apart a little bit of the rigidity that we impose on that experience with our minds. Okay, so if you get yourself set up, I suggest that we do it. Well, some of you know how to meditate, so you'll have your cushions and your stools and so on. If you're new to meditation, and if you are, a special welcome to you, then I suggest you use an upright chair where you can get your feet on the floor and get your bottom right into the back of the chair. If you get your bottom into the back of the chair, then you won't be rounding your back. And see if you can have your weight going down through the sit bones. These are the bones deep in the buttocks. And if your weight's mainly going through the fleshy pads of your buttocks, then you're rolling too far back. If your weight's mainly going through your pubic area, you're tipping too far forward. So look for this sense of dropping down through the sitting bones. And if you do that, you're getting your pelvis in neutral and then allowing the spine to float up out of that, following its natural curves, having the head poised on top of the spine. And see if you can release through the base of the skull and yet openness in the throat. And closing your eyes if that's comfortable, seems appropriate. Otherwise, you could lower your gaze. So we're just very gradually drawing our awareness inwards. And having the hands supported in the lap or on the legs. Let's just begin to settle into this position first of all. Feeling into the points of contact between the bottom and the chair or the cushions or whatever you're sitting on. Feet and the floor, or if you've got other parts of your legs in contact with the floor, feeling into that. Let's just see if we can rest into this position to start with. I really like the word yield, which is where there's a quality of releasing but not collapsing. I also like to imagine that I'm receiving the support of the chair and the floor. It's almost an act of quality of receiving support. So very gradually we can let go a little bit more of gripping onto the body. Very often we kind of hold the body a bit separate from the earth beneath us. And even when we meditate, we can perch on top of our support rather than resting into the support. So let's see if we can rest in a little bit more. And if you'd find it helpful, you could take a deeper in-breath. Then on the out-breath, releasing a little bit more. Do that a few times if you want to. So with each out-breath, have this quality of dropping, arriving, resting, yielding, settling. When you're ready, allowing your breathing to find its own natural rhythm in the body. No need to force or alter around the breathing. Just letting it be there in the background. Now being a little bit curious about where your awareness seems to be located in your body. And probably for many of us, if we're honest, it will seem to be in the head still. Maybe you've got thoughts going on. It's very normal. Just to say that as well, it's completely normal to think. So if you find yourself thinking during the meditation, that's normal. But let's see now if we can allow our awareness, as it were, to slide out of the head and to pour down through the body, all the way down into the feet. And I often like to imagine that awareness is like water. Just kind of pouring down, and now it's saturating the feet, drenching the feet. So there might be a quality of contact with the floor that you can feel into. There might be temperature. Are they hot or cold? There might be sensations. If you've got painful sensations here or anywhere else in the body as we go through, then just noticing, do you have a habit of contracting and hardening against those sensations, labeling it pain, getting into a tussle with it, and exploring what it's like to let these sensations flow through the moments, realizing that what we call pain is actually a flow of sensations. And let it just be part of the overall experience of the feet in this instance, or it'll be other parts of the body later on. And it's also possible that your feet feel very far away. You don't find it easy to call your awareness all the way down there, and that's fine. In the noticing of that, we're also having a moment of awareness. And it may be that you can also feel some kind of energy in the feet, maybe tingling, buzzing, quality of life. The main thing is that we're beginning to shift from abstracting our feet, thinking about the feet as a thought coming from the head. And we're learning how to be inside feet, be inside the experience of what we label feet, this flow of experience, sensation, temperature, energy, dullness, whatever it is. Now flowing up from the feet, this watery awareness, fluid awareness flowing up through the ankles to inhabit the lower legs, the ankles and the lower legs. So now we've got the feet, the ankles and the lower legs all full of awareness. Just being really curious, how are these presenting themselves to my awareness, or how am I experiencing them directly? Temperature, sensation, energy, contact with clothes perhaps, or maybe it's more of an absence, a dullness. Coming into the knees and the thighs, the upper legs. Feeling the shape of the knees. And seeing if we can be inside the whole legs now, including the thighs. If we're sitting on a chair, feeling the contact between the back of the thighs and the chair, the weight, and seeing if we can yield our weight through that contact. So again, allowing the chair to hold us. And just adapting that invitation if you're sitting on some other support. Now let's come up into the buttocks, the hips, the pelvis. Again, noticing, is there still some subtle pulling away from the support? Some subtle perching rather than resting, yielding. Let's see if we can let the buttocks be soft. Feeling the contact, the pressure, temperature, energy, maybe buzzing, tingling, these kind of things. Life. Now let's flow up into the lower part of the torso. So we've got the lower back, and we've got the belly or the abdomen at the front, and we've got the sides. So it's like this awareness is pouring up through the body, and now we're including the lower part of the torso. And again, sensations may be becoming a little bit more prominent. So coming to this more complex part of the body. What's happening? Let's explore first of all what we're experiencing in the lower back. Excuse me. Maybe there's even breathing showing up in the lower back, broadening and subsiding. Maybe there's unpleasant sensations, what we normally call pain. Noticing any habit of contracting, tightening, pushing away, and seeing if we can soften that. Allow this label pain to resolve into a flow of sensations, never exactly the same one moment to the next. And when we notice pain in the body, I find it always very interesting to check back in on the buttocks, because very often we start tensing, holding ourselves against the support. And so keeping the buttocks soft can be very helpful as we yield into flow, release into flow. Maybe there's pleasant sensations, just enjoying those without chasing after them. Let them come, let them go. And what's happening in the belly. Again, maybe there's some breathing showing up. Broadening and subsiding and broadening and subsiding. Now let's allow awareness to fill the whole torso, so to include the upper part of the torso. So we've got the chest at the front, lungs filling and emptying, ribs expanding, retracting, breastbone rising and falling. Seeing if we can allow our breathing to be natural. Just riding these movements, these sensations with awareness, resting inside. And the upper back. Let's see if we can experience breathing in the upper back, the back of the lungs, the back of the ribs, spine, the shoulder blades, all being massaged by breathing, natural breath. If at any point breathing gets uncomfortable or a bit intense, agitating, take your awareness back to your buttocks and just be curious, noticing if they've tensed and softening. Or you could take your awareness to your hands and your feet to stabilize for a few moments. And then very gently edging back inside, breathing again. Broadening to be aware of the whole torso. Feeling into its volume. The movement of breathing, the movement of sensations. Seeing if we can rest inside this flow. Every time we notice rigidifying, contraction, pushing away, in the noticing we can release back into flow a little bit more. Coming into the shoulders now, the shoulders resting at either side of the torso. And at this point, let's just check that the hands are supported. And if the hands are supported, then the shoulders can fall away from the midline of the body, fall away into the support of gravity. And now allowing our awareness to pour down through the shoulders, through the arms, like water pouring down, drenching, saturating all the way to the tips of the fingers and the thumbs. Let's spend a few moments in the hands, noticing temperature, noticing shape or feeling inside shape and temperature, experiencing directly. Let's see if we can let the hands rest in each present moment. Very often when the mind is rushing into the future, there's an echo in the hands, there's a very subtle reaching. And when the mind is caught up in the past, there's a very subtle holding on in the fingers. And if we can let the hands really rest, soft and open, this will help the mind rest, soft and open in each present moment. Now flowing back up through the arms, through the shoulders, across the collarbones, the back of the shoulders, and let's come into the neck and the head. So at this point, checking the position of the head again. Sometimes when we meditate, our heads tip forwards or backwards or side to side, which creates muscular strain in the neck. So let's see if we can let the head be poised on top of the neck, releasing through the base of the skull and yet openness in the throat. Maybe the chin tucked in just a tiny bit. And coming inside the head. the back of the head, the top of the head, the sides, the ears. And let's rest inside the whole face. The brow and the eyes. See if they can soften a little bit. Participating in this flow of experience. Letting go of contraction, rigidifying. And the cheeks and the mouth. Soft jaw, soft tongue, soft lips. Let's see if we can experience the physicality of the head. So the head as a limb of the body. Just as the arms and the legs are limbs, so the head is another limb. So rather than the head being somehow split off from the body, as we so often experience it, let's let the head be part of this whole experience of embodiment, embodying through the moments. So rather than our awareness being located in the head, as is so often our experience, let's let awareness be located in the whole body in this practice, including the head, but also including the body. So broadening our awareness now to be aware of this whole experience of embodying moment by moment. These parts of the body that we label as if they're objectively existing things, let's let them release into the flow of experience. The arising and the passing of sensation, temperature, energy, buzzing, tingling, these kind of things in the whole body. Probably you'll be noticing moments of contraction. That's completely normal. We have discomfort, we instantly tighten against it. But in the noticing, we can choose to release, to soften, to relax back into flow, as it were. Maybe you've got some pleasant experiences and there's a subtle grasping, you want more of it. In the noticing, you can release back into flow. Let it be without tightening against it. So we're practicing being inside this direct experience of embodying. Getting to know the snags, the ways we rigidify, and practicing releasing, opening, softening again and again. We're going to bring this practice to a close in a moment, but perhaps we could form an intention to keep this more fluid, open perception going into your day, your evening, if you're on the other side of the world. Let's bring a tiny bit of movement into the body, maybe the fingers and the toes, first of all. And noticing what happens as you begin to move. And you'll probably find that you add a whole layer of rigidifying on top of the movement. Maybe you hold your breath. So what's it like to have the movement without adding all these extra layers? We've got movement, we've got breathing, we've got yielding, we've got flowing. And as in our own time, just bringing this practice to a close, opening the eyes when you're ready, maybe coming into bigger movements, stretching if you want to. Ah, good. And just transitioning gently. Noticing the effect of the practice. That's always very important with meditation to, at the end, just really reflect. You know, what's been the effect of that? So we've been sitting here for an hour, a bit over an hour, and I need to move. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've got a desk that goes up and down, so I'm going to raise my desk up so you'll see me levitating, which is interesting. But if you want to move around, please do so. Bodies are designed to move, so sitting still for an hour and a half isn't necessarily the best thing. Could you hear that? Do I need to repeat all that? Yes, need to repeat it all, okay. Yeah, so we've got about 20, just over 20 minutes now. I'm aware that some of you will need to go now. The Europeans might need to go to work now. So yeah, really, you got such an exciting adventure ahead of you, trying to take this quality of awareness into your day. And of course, the practice in reality is noticing all the times when you're not doing it. So in reality, you'll come to and you'll be in some tight, contracted state. And then you've got a really wonderful opportunity or choice. You can go down the route of, oh no, I've blown it. I'm totally tight and contracted, which will make you more tight and contracted. Or you can think, wow, I've noticed that I'm all tight and contracted. And now I have this magic moment of choice and release, yield, drop into the floor, drop into gravity, breathe. Relax your buttocks. I often say that's the higher teaching. If we can remember to relax our buttocks, then all will be well. Good. Yeah, so if you need to go to work, then I hope you have a good day and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. The rest of us, yeah, any questions or you can also post what you noticed in the practice. That's always interesting to see. We can learn from each other's experience as well.
So Kim is saying, I wondered about the awareness of flow versus awareness of the present moment. I sometimes feel like the focus on now can make things feel artificially fixed.
Yeah, that's a really fabulous question, Kim. Thank you so much. Yeah, so what is now? That raises that question. What is now? because the present moment, we use that language, obviously, because it's a kind of convention that we understand. And we use that language to call us back from being lost, because very often we're lost in speculating about the future or ruminating about the past. Yeah, and both of those things are mind created. The only time, to use the metaphor of time, that we can directly experience is now. If you think about your physical sensations, the only sensation you can actually experience is the one that you're having right now. A past sensation is a memory, a future sensation is an idea. Yeah, so the invitation to come into the present through experience is very, very useful, because it's calling us back from all this kind of mental elaboration, mental fabrication of past and future. And when we become more adept, as it were, or more skilled at being with our experience in the moment, really being here with what's happening, and softening and releasing and yielding and flowing, is that the present moment changes. When we're thinking in terms of time, the present moment can seem like this tiny little pinprick, as you're saying, something a little bit fixed. I've got to catch this tiny little pinprick, and I've got it and now it's gone. I've got it and now it's gone. It becomes this kind of, again, this slightly tense mental analysis of what is the present moment. But experientially, as you drop more and more deeply into the flow of experience, in what we call the present, experientially, the present is so interesting. It kind of blooms and blossoms into this rich, multidimensional, kind of timeless experience. And so even the language of the present moment doesn't really make any sense, because you're beginning to step outside being bound by the concepts of time. So experientially, just keeping on coming back and softening and opening, something very profound can happen, where what we call the present moment becomes timeless, vast, boundless, open, loving. So that's the kind of taste of it. Yeah, so you sort of, we use the language of coming into the present because that's a useful convention, but experientially you're looking for this kind of open, spacious quality that has something of timelessness about it. I love that. Sometimes I almost get an image. I have a sort of image that you come very, very, very fine. You come to very fine awareness, sort of like almost like the eye of a needle, or the head of a pin, and you sort of pass through that into something that's absolutely vast and boundless. And sometimes the quality, again, as an image, I get quite a lot of sort of images in my practice and metaphors, is the image is of a feather balanced on a pinhead. And you're learning to become, your awareness becomes so refined, you're at that point of intersection between the bottom of the feather and the top of the pinhead, totally exquisitely fine, which we call the present. But that opens the door to something completely open. Yeah, so I don't know if that's helpful. So so sort of now or the present, it's a language convention to help invite us back to here. But the experience of being here can be very, very open and almost timeless, like the ocean or like the blue sky. Yeah. Okay, Nick, I can see the chat as well, but it's helpful for me if you actually pull things out, so I'm not getting distracted by reading.
So Lucy says, that was truly wonderful. I have a trapped nerve in my neck and found that even awareness did not relax the referral tightness and pain in my shoulders. What can you do when you can't relax in your body?
That's such a great question again, because of course, I mean, it's all very subtle and sort of delicate. As soon as you have the craving to relax, you've got a little bit more tension. So it's all totally paradoxical and sort of upside down thinking. So it's kind of, you've got that experience of the trapped nerve. You want the pain to go away. As soon as you want the pain to go away, you're going to have a bit more pain. If you have the trapped nerve, you notice it. Oh, there it is again. Of course you don't want it. I don't want it. Oh, I'm noticing I don't want it. How are my buttocks? That's always very good, because as soon as you've got this kind of trapped nerve, you're bound to have a little bit of contraction in the body. And I think checking in, are you still yielding to the support is very, very good. So you soften, you release, drop, come closer again. What's the actual experience? Sensations, burning, stinging, stabbing, unpleasant. Don't like it. I'm noticing I don't like it. Soften, release, breathe. Because very, very often we hold the breath against discomfort. So tomorrow we're going to do a whole session on breathing, because breathing can be a fantastic doorway into this more open awareness. So you notice that. Oh, it's a little bit better. Great, it's a bit better. Oh, now I'm a bit tense again. Soften, release. Get curious. That sensation is actually a bit pleasant. That's interesting. I thought it was just my whole neck was painful. I thought my whole body was painful. That was the story. And now it's like, it's this flow of all these different sensations. And then you might think, actually, I've had enough of that now. I'm going to go to a part of my body that's pleasant, and just go there a little bit. How's my buttocks? How's my breathing? Am I softening? Am I yielding? Get interested in that. How's my neck? How's my neck? Oh, my neck's a bit better now. So we have this direct experience, and then we layer on top of that the kind of narrative of the story of my pain in my neck, the story of my pain in my shoulders. I don't like it. I want it to go away. This meditation isn't working. And then you notice all that and think, I'm doing it again. Just come back, breathe, soften, yield, investigate. So I'm hoping that's helpful. Yeah. And I think maybe another thing I should say at this point, because probably many of you know, but some of you might not know, that my way into all this world of the mind has been through very, very severe physical pain. So I injured my spine when I was 16, and I've had multiple surgeries. I've got partial paraplegia. My body is not a well-oiled machine, let's put it that way. And I used to think, if I meditated properly, it would all just go away, or my pain would go away. And the great learning has been, it's still unpleasant, that you can have an unpleasant experience in the body. Let go of some fantasy that it's all going to go away, but that the relationship to that experience can profoundly change. You can have a free and open mind whilst the body is hurting. But as soon as you kind of are aversive to that experience, then you just got more suffering. So again, it's very paradoxical. It's coming closer to the actual experience, getting to know it, sort of befriending it, being soft and tender around it, sensitive, loosening all the layers of mental fabrication of I don't like this, I hate this, why won't it go away, poor me, why me, it's not fair, all that kind of stuff, all totally understandable. And I have done all of that, of course. I still do from time to time. But you just notice, that's my mind. I'm doing that. I'm creating all that extra suffering through my relationship to this unpleasant sensation, which is at the end of the day, that's all it is unpleasant sensations. So the point I'm making there is that we may still have unpleasantness. That meditation isn't about getting rid of unpleasantness. Meditation is profoundly changing our relationship with unpleasantness. That's a very, very important point. Okay, good.
So Soph says, I find that my consciousness keeps returning to the head, especially when focusing on different parts of my body. It often feels like it kicks me out of my body and back into my head. How can I work with that?
Okay, I've got another great image for that. This is quite a funny image, is being a bungee jumper. Yeah, I've never done bungee jumping and I never will. but it looks quite exciting, doesn't it? Sort of engaging. So I think, we start off here in the head. Most of us do that. And that's like being the bungee jumper up on the platform. And then we sort of call our awareness into the body, which is like the bungee jumper dropping down. And then you bounce back and you think, oh no, I'm in my head again. Come down to the body and you bounce back and you do this. But the great thing about the bungee jumper image is in the end, the bungee jumper ends up way below the platform. Way below the platform. The bungee jumper does all this bouncing, but ends up, down lower. Where the metaphor rather fails is that bungee jumper ends up upside down. And, we're not ending up upside down in our body. But I think that's quite a good image because it's very common to have this bouncing experience. And again, why I like that image is you can hold it quite lightly. I think with meditation, it's very important that we are quite good-humoured with our own minds and good-humoured with what's going on. Because what can happen, of course, is you think, she's telling me I should be in my body. So you try to sort of drag your awareness down to your body. Feels kind of horrible. You don't want to be there. You bounce back to the head. Oh no, I failed. She's telling me I should be in my knees now. That's like going to Mars. My knees feel completely alien and far away. Oh no, I'm failing. Think, oh no, I'm being a bungee jumper. Let's just bounce down to there. See what that feels like. Bounce back. Oh, here I am again. Bounce down, bounce back. But through not getting too heavy with yourself, being a bit playful with yourself, you may end up lower in the body. And, as I've said a number of times, noticing when you're not managing to, accomplish whatever I'm suggesting, that's your moment of awareness. Your moment of awareness isn't necessarily doing it well or perfectly at all. Your moment of awareness is, oh, I'm judging myself. Oh, I'm back in my head again. Because then you've got the choice. So when you're aware, you can choose. When you're not aware, you're just a victim of all these sort of unconscious impulses propelling you through the day. And that's really unpleasant, as I'm sure we all know. But when you're aware, it's like, oh, I'm doing it again. Hold it lightly, laugh at yourself, think, where's my choice point? My choice point is I can either judge myself or I think, oh, okay, let's have another go at going down into the body. Let's have another go. And the other thing that I learned from Sona, he's got this wonderful saying that the mind goes to what it's interested in. The mind always follows interest. So if if you're finding it hard to be in your body, in your head, that tells you that you're more interested in what's going on in your head. So your job or your challenge or your invitation is, how can I get really, really interested in this experience of embodying? That's your question. I can't answer that for you, but it might be setting yourself, how many different sensations can I feel? That can be really interesting. I'm in my back. Well, how many different sensations can I feel? And where are they? What's their location? What's their duration? What's their quality? There's quite a standard Buddhist teaching. Location, duration, quality. My breathing, is it harsh, ragged, feathery, soft, delicate? Can I feel my breathing in my big toe? We'll do more of that tomorrow. And become an adventurer. That's what I often like to think, that we're journeying into a whole new kind of landscape. You're David Livingstone in Africa or something. No one's ever been there before, and you're completely fascinated and completely intrigued. Like, wow, what is this? What is it like to embody as a verb? What is that actually like? And then your mind will get more interested in that than your favorite little fantasies, hopefully. Because it's all about interest. It's all about interest. Good.
So Amy is asking, she's saying, I feel very relaxed in the body, but I feel like I could start sagging. How do I stay relaxed and alert in the body? There feels like there has to be some sort of holding to stay awake and alert.
Yeah, well, again, I think a great question. And you've got a wonderful question there to explore for yourself. That's a fantastic inquiry and meditation for yourself. You know, I can tell you things, but so interesting when you notice you're sagging and relaxed, but dull. The fact that you've noticed it is really good. That means there's some alertness there. And then it's like, okay, what can I do in my practice now to rouse a little bit more focus and energy? I mean, I could say a few things, and I will say a few things, but I think it's so good when we have these inquiries for ourselves in our practice. We notice something and then it's like, oh, so what could I do? So the sort of things you can do is you can raise your awareness a little bit higher in the body if you're a bit sort of dull. Check your posture, that's always good, because if your shoulders are rounded, your head's drooping, you can notice that and you can just pull your shoulders back a bit, raise your energy higher, breathe a little bit higher in the body. And I think it's such an interesting inquiry for all of us, you know, relaxation and alertness, so interesting. Because often what we do is we sag into just sleepiness, or alertness becomes this kind of agitation, or alertness becomes a bit rigid, a bit sort of hard-edged. So what is a soft-edged, vibrant, vital, alive, soft, yielding, releasing relaxation like? And you can just explore that. That's a great thing to explore in your practice. Got 4 more minutes. Anything else, Nick?
So I think that's it for the questions. There's a few comments and lots of thank yous.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we could just leave it there. And, you know, I'd like to see the whole week as a continuum. So rather than we're all just coming in for a practice every morning, that the practices will build on each other. So I'm going to give you homework. So your homework today really is just to notice your tendency of rigidifying, which we all have. And when you notice you're getting really tight and contracted, imagine that's like all these layers of sort of, again, I'm getting an image of a sort of mollusk with lots of layers of shells. We sort of create all these layers of crustiness around us. And just imagine that dropping away and you just come back to being in the body, feeling into your sensations, feeling into temperature, feeling into gravity. You know, allow your body to be supported by gravity. And remember this teaching from the Buddha that everything is impermanent. Absolutely everything, even you, that your nature is flow. Your nature is flow. That could be your teaching for the day. But as I say, you know, if you think, oh, great, I'm going to have all these moments during the day, probably by the end of the day, you will think I've completely failed because, you know, all I've noticed is all my moments of contraction. That is the practice. That is the practice, to notice all the moments of contraction. And remember, you have a choice. Remember, you have a choice. You can either wind it up tighter, or you can think, oh, just breathe out, soften, release, flow. That's your moment to practice. That's where you're calming the vortex of the whirlpool, to use Bernardo's wonderful metaphor. Okay, good. So I really enjoyed it. Really loved being with you all, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I think I probably said to tell you to unmute. Maybe I forgot to do that bit. If you want to unmute to say goodbye, then please do so.
Thank you, Vidyamala. That was wonderful. Really
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Vidyamala.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.